The palace of the Zayari Empire was built from dark stone that glowed faintly with veins of crystal, towering above the capital city like a fortress that touched the sky. Its halls were lined with statues of ancient warriors, each carved to look larger than life, their eyes filled with pride and defiance. It was here, in a chamber deep inside the palace, that Ethan Cole stood quietly, carrying a toolkit strapped across his shoulder. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him, not because of the tools or the armor he was about to repair, but because of who was waiting inside. The queen of the Zayari, Solara, was known across the stars as a warrior without equal. Her empire had fought humans bitterly only a few years ago, and though peace had been signed, trust was still fragile. For Ethan, a human engineer among her people, the fact that he had been summoned to her private armory felt both like an honor and a threat. He wondered if he had been chosen because of his skills or if this was some kind of test that could cost him dearly if he failed. The great doors of the armory opened with a slow grind, and Ethan stepped inside. The chamber was dimly lit, the walls covered with racks of alien weapons that glowed with faint energy. At the center stood the queen herself. She was taller than any human, her form powerful yet graceful, wearing only the lower half of her ceremonial armor. The chest piece rested on a stand before her, its polished plates cracked and sparking faintly from damage sustained in battle. Even without the armor, she radiated authority, her golden eyes watching Ethan as if weighing his soul. "You are the human engineer," she said, her voice deep and calm yet carrying a weight that made Ethan's heart quicken. "They say your hands are steady. We shall see if that is true." Ethan nodded, keeping his tone respectful. "Yes, Your Majesty. I was told your armor required attention, may I?" She gave a small tilt of her head, a gesture that might have been permission. Ethan approached the stand carefully, laying out his tools. The armor was unlike anything human soldiers used. It was both mechanical and alive, woven with energy-conducting crystal threads that pulsed faintly like veins. As he examined the damage, he saw hairline fractures running along the plating, and deeper burns where weapons had pierced. Whoever had attacked her had been skilled, and the armor had barely held. "You fought recently," Ethan murmured, forgetting for a moment that he was speaking aloud. "These cracks. They could have spread. If you had worn this again in battle, it might have collapsed." Solara arched a brow, stepping closer. "You speak as though you care for my survival." Ethan looked up, realizing his mistake. He should have chosen his words more carefully. "I care about the work, Majesty. A suit of armor should protect its wearer. If it fails, that is a flaw. I don't like flaws." For a moment there was silence. Then, to his surprise, she gave a faint smile, sharp and brief like a flash of lightning. "A curious answer. Most who stand before me speak only to flatter or to fear. You speak as if I am merely a task to complete." "I didn't mean it that way," Ethan said quickly. "I meant, you deserve protection that works." Her gaze lingered on him, and then she stepped even closer, her shadow falling over him. Ethan felt the heat rise in his face as she leaned down, her golden eyes narrowing with interest. Her voice dropped lower, carrying a softness that seemed out of place in the cold armory. "Don't be shy, human. Do your work. I want to see if your people's hands are as skilled as they claim." Ethan swallowed hard, forcing himself to focus on the task. He adjusted his tools, gently prying open a damaged section of the plating. Sparks hissed, and he carefully replaced a cracked crystal filament with one he had brought from the human station. His hands moved with care and precision, the way they always did when he was repairing delicate machines. Still, he could feel her eyes on him, studying every movement. The silence stretched. Only the soft hum of energy came from the armor as he worked. Ethan tried to distract himself by talking, though he wasn't sure if it was wise. "This design is impressive. The balance between strength and mobility. I've never seen anything like it. Whoever first created this must have been a genius." Solara tilted her head slightly. "You think my people are geniuses?" "I think anyone who can create armor that heals itself while fighting deserves that word," Ethan replied honestly. "Humans, we make things work, but we don't always make them beautiful." "Beauty matters little in war," Solara said. "Strength, endurance, dominance, these matter. And yet," Ethan said softly, adjusting a joint mechanism, "even the strongest can fall if their armor cracks in the wrong place." She studied him again, her golden eyes gleaming. "Are you speaking of the armor or of me?" Ethan froze for a second, then forced himself to continue working. "The armor, Majesty," he said carefully. "Just the armor." She made a low sound that might have been amusement. You humans. So careful with words, yet so bold to stand here without trembling. Tell me, Ethan Cole, does nothing frighten you? Placing his tool aside, Ethan looked up at her. Plenty frightens me. But fear doesn't fix broken things. If I let it control me, I wouldn't get anything done. For the first time, her expression softened. Something like respect flickered across her face. Perhaps there is more to your kind than frailty. Ethan bent his head again, working in silence. But inside his thoughts were racing. He had come here thinking this was just another repair job. Instead, he found himself under the gaze of a queen who seemed to be testing not only his skills, but his spirit. He didn't know what would come of it, but one thing was certain. This was no ordinary task. The work lasted hours. He carefully replaced damaged crystal veins, realigned fractured plates, and polished the armor until its surface gleamed again. Solara remained near him the whole time, occasionally asking questions about human engineering, about why his people fought wars despite their short lives, about why humans pushed themselves beyond reason. Ethan answered honestly, even when the answers made his kind seem weak or strange. And each time she listened closely, as if weighing the truth in his words. At last he stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. The armor stood whole once more, glowing faintly as the energy surged through its veins. It's ready, he said. Solara touched the chest plate with her clawed fingers, testing the repairs. A faint smile curved her lips. You have done well. Better than I expected. Ethan exhaled, relief flooding through him. I'm glad it meets your standards, Majesty. Her gaze fixed on him one last time, intense and searching. Then, with a voice low enough that it seemed meant only for him, she whispered again, Don't be shy, human. This may not be the last time you stand this close to me. Ethan's heart thudded, but he kept his face calm. He packed his tools, bowed respectfully, and left the chamber. Yet as he walked through the halls of the palace, he knew this was only the beginning. Something had shifted in that armory, something that would change his life, and perhaps even the fate of 2 species. The days that followed Ethan's work in the armory felt different. The palace, with its towering walls and endless corridors, had always seemed cold and distant to him. But after that evening with the Queen, whispers began to spread. Guards eyed him with suspicion. Courtiers fell silent when he entered a room. Even some of the technicians he occasionally worked with avoided him now. It was not hard to guess why. He was a human, one of the former enemies of the Ziyari. The war between their people had ended only 3 years ago, and scars still remained. For many, humans were weak creatures, tolerated only because the treaty demanded it. And yet Queen Solara herself had chosen Ethan to repair her sacred armor. That single act broke traditions older than empires. Ethan tried to ignore the stares as he walked the palace halls, carrying his toolkit. He reminded himself that he was only here to do his work. His task was simple: fix what was broken, make machines run again. But even as he told himself that, he could not forget the way the Queen's golden eyes had watched him, or the strange softness in her voice when she whispered those words. Don't be shy. Human. The Queen summoned him again only 2 days later, this time not to the private armory but to her war chamber. Ethan arrived to find her seated at a large table covered with maps and glowing projections of distant star systems. Around her stood a circle of Ziyari nobles, tall and armored, their expressions unreadable. When Ethan entered, their eyes narrowed like blades drawn against him. Solara raised her hand and silence fell. Leave us, she commanded. The nobles hesitated, but they obeyed, bowing before filing out of the chamber. When the doors closed, only Ethan and the Queen remained. Ethan set his toolkit down carefully. You called for me, Majesty? Solara's gaze lingered on him. I did. I wished to see if you would come, even knowing that my court now whispers about you. I don't listen to whispers, Ethan replied. They don't fix broken things. That earned him a quiet laugh, low and sharp. You speak boldly for one so small. Do you not fear that their hatred may one day cut you down? Ethan hesitated. He thought of the glares in the halls, the muttered words he didn't understand but could guess the meaning of. Yes, he feared it, but fear was not something he could admit here, not in front of her. If they hate me, that's their choice. I can't change it. I'll keep doing my work. That's all I can do. Solara studied him with those piercing golden eyes. And if your work one day fails me? If your hands falter and my armor breaks, do you know what it would mean? I do, Ethan said softly. It would mean your trust in me was wasted, and that's something I don't want. For a moment, silence filled the war chamber. Then the queen leaned forward, resting her clawed hands on the table. Trust, she repeated as though tasting the word. Among my people, trust is rare. Power is earned by strength. Loyalty is bought with fear or blood, and yet, you speak of trust as if it is a shield stronger than armor. It is, Ethan said simply. Armor can crack. Trust holds even when everything else fails. Solara's eyes softened, though only slightly. You humans are strange. Weak bodies, short lives, and yet you cling to such fragile ideas as though they are weapons. Tell me, Ethan Cole, why do you fight wars you cannot win? Why do you resist empires stronger than you? Ethan drew in a slow breath. He wasn't sure how to explain it in a way she would understand. But he spoke honestly. Because if we don't resist, then we lose everything without a fight. Even if we fall, at least we fall knowing we tried. That's what makes us human. The queen's gaze lingered on him, long and unblinking. Then slowly she said, Perhaps that is why you interest me. Ethan blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. But before he could ask, the chamber doors burst open. A guard stepped inside, bowing deeply. Majesty, forgive the interruption. The council requests your presence at once. There is news from the outer colonies. Solara's expression hardened instantly. I will come. She rose to her full height, towering over Ethan, then glanced down at him. Wait here. She swept from the chamber, her presence like a storm leaving the room. Ethan stood alone, staring at the maps and projections still glowing on the table. Dots of light marked battles, colonies, trade routes. Lines of red stretched across human and Ziyari borders. Peace was fragile, like glass on the edge of shattering. Minutes turned into an hour. Ethan wandered the chamber quietly, examining the alien designs on the walls, the ancient banners of Ziyari victories. When Solara finally returned, her expression was unreadable. She dismissed the guards and sat heavily at the table, her claws tapping against the surface. You waited, she said. You asked me to, Ethan replied. Many would have fled. Few enjoy the silence of this chamber. I'm used to silence, Ethan said softly. Machines don't talk much. Again, a small smile touched her lips. But it faded quickly. There are those who oppose you, human. Some already question why I let you touch what is sacred. They wonder why I trust your hands on my armor, when even my most loyal warriors are not permitted. They see weakness in me because of you. Ethan's stomach tightened. He had expected whispers, suspicion, but not that his presence could harm her. If I've caused trouble, Majesty, I can leave. You don't need me here. Her golden eyes snapped to him, sharp and unyielding. No, you will not leave. You are mine to command, and I will not have my choices questioned. Let them whisper. Let them rage. It will not change what I decide. Ethan froze, his breath caught in his chest. There was no doubt in her tone, no hesitation. To the Ziyari, her word was law, and she had chosen him, a human above the pride of her own court. Solara leaned closer, her voice low again like a secret between them. Do not mistake me, Ethan, I am not kind. I am not merciful. I am queen, but there is something in you I cannot ignore. When you speak, you do not tremble. When you work, you do not falter. You remind me of a weapon forged not from strength, but from will. Ethan met her gaze, his voice steady, though his heart raced. And what does that make me, Majesty? A tool? A weapon? Her lips curved slightly. Perhaps, or perhaps something more. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Ethan wanted to ask what she meant, but he knew better than to push. Instead, he bowed his head. I'll keep doing my work. That's all I know how to do. That, she said softly, may be why you are dangerous. The following days deepened the whispers. Wherever Ethan went, eyes followed him. Some filled with curiosity, others with hatred. Once he caught two nobles speaking in harsh tones, their words cutting like knives even though he did not understand the language. When they noticed him, they fell silent, sneering as they walked away. Yet each time the queen summoned him, the atmosphere changed. She asked him questions about humanity, why humans wrote songs even in war, why they painted pictures on ruined walls, why they dreamed of futures they might never see. Ethan answered as best he could, though sometimes he laughed at how strange his own people sounded when he explained them. Solara listened with an intensity that unsettled him, as though every word was a puzzle she was determined to solve. And slowly something grew in the space between them. Not trust, not yet, but a connection. She tested him with words, sometimes sharp, sometimes playful, watching how he responded. He in turn found himself speaking more freely, though always careful not to overstep. One evening, as he adjusted the energy conduits inside her armor, she stood close behind him. He felt her gaze on his back, heavy and warm. "You do not flinch even when I lean near," she murmured. Ethan forced his hands to remain steady. "If I flinch, I might drop the tools, and then I'd have to explain why your armor is broken because I was nervous." Her low laugh echoed in the chamber. "You amuse me, human." Ethan smiled faintly, though he kept his eyes on the work. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is," she said softly. "Do not forget it." That night, when Ethan returned to his quarters, he lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. He had not come here seeking anything more than his duty. Yet now he found himself caught in something larger than he understood. The Queen of the Zyari was watching him, testing him, perhaps even trusting him. And beyond the palace walls, he could feel it. The storm was coming. The palace of the Zyari stood silent in the early morning, though the city beyond hummed with the slow stir of daily life. Ethan Cole moved quietly through the shadowed halls, his toolkit slung over one shoulder. Despite his calm exterior, a part of him remained tense. The events of the past days had left him both proud and wary. Being trusted by the Queen had elevated his status in ways he had never expected, but it had also painted a target on his back. Whispers followed him like shadows, and he could feel eyes on him in every corridor, every stairwell, every room he entered. He arrived at the armory just as the first light of the twin suns spilled through the tall windows. Queen Solara was already there, seated on a polished obsidian bench, her armor partially disassembled on nearby stands. The air hummed with quiet energy, the soft glow of power crystals reflecting off the polished metal. As Ethan stepped forward, she looked up, her golden eyes sharp and alert. "You are punctual, human," she said. Her tone carried neither warmth nor reprimand, simply observation. "I was told timing is important," Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady. "And I respect the work, Majesty." She tilted her head, considering him. "Many humans speak of respect. Few show it in action. You are not like the others." Ethan bent over the armor, beginning to examine the energy conduits that powered the chest plating. Each filament was delicate, running like veins through the polished metal, and many had small fractures he had only partially repaired the last time. His hands moved with careful precision, probing each joint, testing each connection. As he worked, Solara spoke quietly, almost conversationally. "Do you understand why I call you here so often, human?" "I assume it is because you value my skills," Ethan said, though he kept his eyes on the work. "You are more than that," she said softly. "You see things differently. Where my warriors see only power, you see possibility. Where my people see weakness, you see potential. That is why I watch you." Ethan froze slightly. "You watch me?" She leaned closer, her presence filling the space behind him like a quiet storm. "Not merely watch. I learned from you. Your people have something my empire lacks, something simple yet powerful. Courage, ingenuity, and restraint. You weigh your actions before you strike. You do not rush to violence. You do not hide behind tradition or fear. You simply act." Ethan swallowed hard, trying not to let his nerves show. He focused on a small crack in the plating, carefully adjusting the crystal filament. "I do what I can. That's all any of us can do." Solara made a soft sound, a mixture of amusement and approval. "Yet you do it so well, it is infuriating and admirable all at once." He dared a glance upward. "Infuriating?" "Yes," she said, her voice low. "Because humans can survive in ways my people cannot. You endure more than your body should allow, and yet your mind remains clear. Your heart remains steady. It is irritating." Ethan forced a small laugh, though it came out uneven. "I never thought anyone would call me irritating as a compliment." "You will learn that in my presence, human. Everything you thought was certain may be questioned," she replied. "Even the meaning of compliments." He continued working, letting her words wash over him. There was something magnetic about her presence, something he could not name. She was power embodied, yet her curiosity about him felt personal, dangerous even in a palace where trust was rare and suspicion ruled. The silence was broken suddenly by the clatter of hurried footsteps in the hall. Ethan looked up, tension creeping into his shoulders. A guard entered, bowing deeply. "Majesty, forgive the interruption. Reports from the outer colony suggest a threat approaching the palace. Sensors indicate movement inconsistent with patrols, possible intruders." Solara's golden eyes narrowed. "Show me." The guard activated a projection on the table. A map of the surrounding regions appeared, dots of light flickering across star systems. One cluster moved quickly, seemingly undetected by the regular patrols. "We are not certain of their intent," the guard said, "but they are approaching the palace at high speed. They may strike within the day." Solara's gaze shifted to Ethan. "You have seen my armor. You know its weaknesses. If these intruders are skilled, they will find them." Ethan's hands tightened on the tools. "I can reinforce it. I know what needs strengthening. If we act quickly, we can make it nearly impenetrable." She studied him closely. "And if we fail?" Ethan hesitated. "Then we adapt. That is all humans can do. Fight with what we have and adjust when the situation changes." A small smile touched her lips. Bold words for one so small. "Yet you may be correct. Perhaps that is why I trust you." Hours passed as Ethan worked tirelessly on her armor. Every crack, every joint, every energy filament was inspected and reinforced. Solara observed quietly, occasionally asking questions about the design, the materials, or the principles behind his work. Ethan explained each choice carefully, aware that even a small mistake could cost both of them dearly. When he finally stepped back, the armor gleamed under the soft light. Every energy conduit flowed smoothly, every plate aligned perfectly. Even the most delicate crystal veins had been replaced or reinforced. "It is ready," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. Solara approached, running a clawed hand along the chest plating. "You have done well," she said, her voice low. "Better than I expected. Perhaps you are learning faster than I imagined." Ethan nodded, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, Majesty. I only did what I knew how to do." "You did more than that," she said softly, her golden eyes locking onto his. "You proved something, that humans can be more than their bodies suggest. That courage, skill, and will can make one dangerous even without traditional strength. That is remarkable." Ethan felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. He had repaired armor, not hearts or minds, but her words struck deeper than he had expected. Suddenly, an alarm sounded from the hall. The palace doors shuddered under impact. Shouts rang out as guards ran past the chamber. Ethan's pulse quickened. "The intruders," he murmured. Solara moved with swift grace, sliding into her armor in moments. "Stay here, human," she commanded. "This is my battle. I can help," Ethan said, though he was unsure how much he could do against armed attackers. Her eyes softened just slightly. "Then use what you know. Protect what is precious. That is all humans ever do, isn't it?" Ethan nodded, and as the first sounds of battle echoed through the palace, he worked quickly to reinforce defensive mechanisms nearby. Locks, doors, and energy barriers responded to his adjustments, delaying the intruder's advance. Though small, each action mattered. He realized that human ingenuity and courage could influence even the mightiest empire. Through the chaos, he felt Solara's presence nearby, powerful and commanding. She moved like a force of nature, deflecting blows, her armor protecting her as she fought. Yet even she was not invincible, and Ethan knew his interventions could make the difference between life and death. Minutes stretched like hours. Sparks flew, metal clashed, alarms blared. Ethan's hands worked with precise efficiency, guided by his knowledge and determination. Each success, each small victory reinforced the idea that humans, though fragile compared to the Zayari, could hold their own. At last, the intruders were repelled, forced back by a combination of the Queen's strength and Ethan's quick thinking. Silence returned to the palace, though the aftermath was evident in bent weapons, scorched walls, and exhausted guards. Solara removed her helmet, revealing her face streaked with sweat but unbroken. Her eyes found Ethan, and for the first time her expression was unguarded. "You have done more than repair armor, Ethan Cole. You have shown me that humans can be valuable even in battle. That courage is not measured by size but by action." Ethan bowed, humbled. "I only did what I could, Majesty. I never expected praise." She studied him in silence for a long moment, then leaned slightly closer, her voice low and quiet. "Do not be shy, human. You may find that your courage is needed more often than you imagine." Ethan met her gaze, heart racing. He had come to the palace to repair armor, not to be tested, observed, or drawn into the life of an alien queen. Yet here he was, inextricably linked to her fate, and perhaps, in a way he could not yet name, she was drawn to his presence as well. He realized, As the palace settled into uneasy calm that this was only the beginning, the Queen of the Ziyari had allowed him a place at her side, and though danger would come again, he was ready. Humans were fragile, yes, but courage, ingenuity, and loyalty could tip the balance. He had seen it today, and Solara had seen it too. As he packed his tools and prepared to leave the armory, he felt her gaze on him one last time, lingering longer than it should have. It was a look that promised challenges, intrigue, and perhaps trust in ways humans and Ziyari had never imagined possible. And beyond the palace walls, the galaxy waited, vast, dangerous, and full of secrets. The palace had returned to an uneasy quiet. The echoes of the recent attack lingered in the corridors, the distant hum of repaired energy barriers serving as a faint reminder of the chaos that had almost breached its walls. Ethan Cole moved carefully through the halls, toolkit in hand, yet his mind was far from the mechanical repairs he was supposed to perform. His thoughts were tangled with the memory of Solara, the Queen of the Ziyari, moving like a force of nature in battle, and the faint but unmistakable weight of her gaze upon him. When he reached the armory, she was already there, her armor fully restored, her presence commanding yet calm. She did not speak immediately, only watched him with those golden eyes that seemed to see more than any human should be able to. Ethan set down his toolkit and began to inspect the minor damage from the attack, though the armor itself had held remarkably well under the strain. "You did well," she said finally, her voice cutting through the quiet. "Not just in repair, human. You contributed to my defense. Many would have faltered in your place." Ethan glanced up, feeling both pride and a sharp edge of anxiety. "I just did what I could, Majesty. I never expected to be part of the defense. You were necessary," Solara replied, stepping closer. Her voice was softer now, but carried the same authority that made the air itself seem to shift. "Your people, humans, have something unique. Even here, even surrounded by warriors who would strike without hesitation, your mind found a path to victory. You are resourceful. That is rare." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. He had come to the palace to repair armor, to apply his skills quietly and efficiently. Yet here he was, receiving praise from one of the most formidable beings he had ever met. He tried to mask his emotions and returned to his work, inspecting the energy conduits and checking for cracks. As he worked, Solara's gaze remained on him, observing each movement. "Tell me," she said after a pause, "do humans always act so composed under pressure?" Ethan hesitated, thinking carefully. "We try, often we fail. But sometimes even in failure we find a way forward. That is what keeps us alive." She studied him for a long moment. "A way forward. You speak of it as though it is simple. To my people, survival is strength, and strength is power. Yet you claim humans survive through will alone. Fascinating." Before he could respond, a sudden alarm echoed through the armory. Ethan froze, then leapt into action, grabbing his toolkit. The outer doors of the palace shuddered, and he could hear the shouts of guards rushing to intercept intruders. The attack had not ended. It had only paused. Solara moved beside him in a fluid motion, her armor gleaming as she donned her helmet. "We cannot waste time," she said. "The intruders have returned, and they are stronger this time. We must act immediately." Ethan nodded, setting down his tools for the moment. He had no experience fighting like the Queen, no training in hand-to-hand combat against a race as formidable as the Ziyari. But he knew the palace, its mechanisms, and most importantly, the vulnerabilities of its defense systems. If he could assist with those, even in small ways, it might tip the balance. The attack began in full force. Outside the armory, alien shapes moved with frightening speed, weapons humming with energy that could slice through stone. Ethan activated emergency locks and reinforced barriers, his hands moving with precision under pressure. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and he barely had time to breathe. Through the chaos, he felt Solara's presence, striking down opponents with a fluidity and strength that seemed impossible for even one being. Yet he knew that even she could be overwhelmed if too many attacked at once. Using his knowledge of the palace's defenses, he rerouted energy to the most vulnerable doors, creating safe paths for reinforcements and slowing the intruders. At one point, an attacker broke through a corridor near the armory. Ethan acted instinctively, activating a concealed mechanism that released a surge of energy, knocking the enemy back. The human instinct to improvise, to think creatively under pressure, was something the Ziyari had underestimated. Solara's voice cut through the din, low and commanding. Ethan, focus on the conduits near the main hall. If they breach there, the palace is lost. He sprinted toward the area she indicated, bypassing fallen debris and clashing energy fields. His hands moved deftly, manipulating control panels he barely understood at first glance, guided by intuition and human adaptability. He rerouted energy flows, shutting down corridors to the intruders while keeping escape paths open for the Queen and her loyal guards. By the time Solara arrived at the main hall, the tide had shifted. Thanks to Ethan's quick thinking, the intruders were disoriented, their coordinated attacks faltering. Solara struck with precise fury, her armor absorbing blows that would have killed lesser beings. Ethan watched, a mixture of awe and fear in his chest. He had never seen anything like it. The combination of human ingenuity and alien strength working together, each complementing the other. Minutes stretched, each one filled with tension. Sparks flew from malfunctioning machinery. The smell of ozone filled the air, and the sounds of battle echoed through the palace halls. Ethan's hands worked tirelessly, patching damaged systems and reinforcing barriers, while Solara continued to fight with relentless precision. Finally, the intruders began to retreat, unable to penetrate the reinforced defenses and disoriented by the unexpected interference. The palace had survived, its walls intact, thanks to the combined efforts of human skill and Zayari might. When the last attacker fell back beyond the palace grounds, silence returned, heavy and tense. Ethan sank against a wall, breathing hard, his hands smeared with soot and sweat. Solara approached, removing her helmet to reveal her face, streaked with battle but unbowed. "You have done more than I expected, human," she said, her voice low but warm.
"Your people."
"You endure in ways my empire cannot. Your courage is not measured by size or strength, but by your mind and will. You have proven that today." Ethan shook his head, still catching his breath. "I only did what I could. The armor, the systems, that's all I know how to do." "And that was enough," she replied. She leaned slightly closer, her golden eyes locking onto his. "Do not forget it. Humans are small, fragile, and underestimated, and yet you can tip the balance of empires with what others overlook. That is why I watch you, human. That is why I allowed you near me." Ethan's heart thudded. He had been drawn to her presence since the first day, but now he understood the magnitude of what had happened. She had entrusted her life, her empire's security, to a human, a being seen as weak and insignificant by her people. And he had risen to meet that trust. The aftermath was quiet but tense. Guards repaired damage, systems were restored, and the palace slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Yet Ethan knew that nothing would ever be the same. His presence had become inseparable from the Queen's protection, and the bond they had formed, though unspoken, carried weight. That evening, Solara summoned him once more to the armory. She did not speak immediately, only observed as he inspected the armor again, making minor adjustments to ensure it would withstand future attacks. "You have grown accustomed to danger," she said finally, her voice quiet. "And yet you do not falter. That is rare." Ethan looked up. "I do what I must, Majesty. I have no choice but to act." Her gaze softened, though only slightly. "No, you have choice, human. That is what makes your courage remarkable. You choose to act, even when your life is at risk. That is something my people rarely understand." He nodded, humbled. "I only do what I can to survive, and to help others survive." Solara studied him in silence, then leaned slightly closer, her voice lowering to a whisper meant only for him. "Do not be shy, human. You have proven your worth today, and tomorrow perhaps you will prove it again." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride, fear, and something else he could not yet name. He packed his tools carefully, preparing to leave, but the weight of her gaze stayed with him. He had come to the palace as a simple engineer, a human among aliens, yet now he realized that humans could change outcomes, influence destinies, and earn respect, even from a queen. As he walked through the palace halls that night, he understood something essential. The galaxy was vast and full of danger, but humans had something unique, something that even the mightiest warriors could not easily counter. Courage, ingenuity, and loyalty, the simple yet extraordinary traits that made him human, were enough to tip the balance. And somewhere in the shadows, Queen Solara was watching, calculating and perhaps in her own way, trusting him more than anyone else ever had. The palace was quiet again, though the tension from the previous attack still lingered in the corridors like a shadow that refused to lift. Ethan Cole moved carefully through the halls, his toolkit in hand, though his mind was focused not on repairs but on the growing storm he felt approaching. Solara had summoned him once more, and he could sense from her tone earlier that this meeting would be different. Not a repair task, not a lesson in technique, but something that would test both his skill and his courage in ways he could not yet predict. He arrived at the armory to find her standing near the central workbench, her armor gleaming under the soft glow of the energy crystals embedded in the walls. She did not greet him immediately, only studied him with those golden eyes, sharp and commanding as ever. Ethan felt a shiver of anticipation run through him. He had grown used to her presence, to the way she watched him, but now it carried a weight that was almost tangible. "You have done well," she said at last, her voice quiet but firm. "Not just in repair, human. You have proven your worth in ways that my empire did not expect. You have survived where others would have faltered. You have acted with courage, ingenuity, and loyalty. Tell me, do you understand what that means?" Ethan paused, considering his answer carefully. "It means, I've done my best, Majesty. That's all I know how to do." Solara stepped closer, her golden eyes never leaving his. "No, human. It means more. It means that your people, though small and underestimated, can tip the balance of empires. That courage, will, and cleverness are as valuable as strength and weapons. That even one human can change outcomes that even my most loyal warriors could not. Do you understand?" Ethan nodded slowly. I understand, Majesty. I never expected to be anything more than an engineer, but I will continue to do what I can." She gave a faint smile, sharp and fleeting like a glimpse of sunlight through storm clouds. "Good. You are not merely useful, Ethan Cole. You are remarkable in a way my people rarely encounter. That is why I have trusted you even when others doubted. That is why I have allowed you to stand close, to touch what is sacred, and to act when many would have frozen." For a moment, silence filled the room. Ethan felt the weight of her words pressing on him, a mixture of pride and unease. He had come to this palace as a simple human, a technician among beings far stronger and more powerful than himself. Yet now he realized that humans, his people, were extraordinary precisely because of their courage and adaptability. Before he could respond, an alarm echoed through the armory. Ethan's pulse quickened. He ran to the nearest console, quickly analyzing the source. Outside the palace walls, a fleet of unknown ships approached, their trajectories fast and precise. They were not mere raiders. This was an organized assault, aimed directly at the palace and by extension the queen herself. Solara's expression hardened. "It seems our enemies are bold or desperate," she said. "This will be a true test of both your skill and your courage, human. Are you ready?" Ethan swallowed, but his hands were steady. "I am, Majesty. I will do what I must." The first ships breached the outer defenses, energy weapons cutting through shields and walls with deadly precision. Ethan moved quickly, using every skill he had learned about the palace's systems. He rerouted energy flows to reinforce vulnerable points, activated automated defense turrets, and shut down access points to prevent the attackers from gaining entry. Each action required careful thought and rapid execution. Mistakes could cost lives, including his own. Through the chaos, Solara moved like a force of nature. Her armor gleamed as she struck down attackers with precise blows, deflecting energy blasts and commanding the palace guards with unwavering authority. Yet even she relied on Ethan's interventions to maintain the integrity of the defenses. His ingenuity had become the hidden force behind her might, and together, they formed a combination that neither side had expected. At one point, an enemy ship breached the inner courtyard, aiming directly at the Queen's command post. Ethan acted instinctively, activating a series of countermeasures he had prepared in anticipation. Energy barriers surged, redirecting the ship's weapons and buying precious moments. Solara fought with unmatched skill, but Ethan's timely interventions prevented disaster, proving again that even one human could make a difference against overwhelming odds. Minutes stretched like hours. Sparks flew from damaged panels. Alarms blared, and the air was thick with smoke and the tang of ozone. Ethan's hands moved tirelessly, adjusting controls, repairing damaged systems, and reinforcing vulnerable points. He felt every heartbeat, every rush of adrenaline, as if the fate of the palace rested on his actions, and in truth it did. Finally, the attackers began to falter. Disoriented and unable to penetrate the reinforced defenses, they retreated, forced back beyond the palace walls. Silence returned, heavy and tense, though the aftermath of battle was evident in bent metal, scorched stone, and exhausted guards. Solara removed her helmet, revealing her face streaked with sweat but unbowed. Her golden eyes found Ethan, and for the first time her expression was unguarded. "You have done more than repair armor today, Ethan Cole. You have proven that humans, though small, fragile, and underestimated, can influence outcomes in ways my people cannot. You have earned my trust and perhaps something more." Ethan bowed, humbled beyond words. "I only did what I could, Majesty. I never expected this." "You did it anyway," she said softly. "That is what makes you human. Courage, ingenuity, loyalty. They are not measured in size or strength, but in action and heart. You remind me of what is possible when fear does not control choice." "That is remarkable." For a long moment they stood in silence. The palace was still, the air heavy with the remnants of conflict, and Ethan felt the weight of what had occurred. He had come to repair armor, to work as an engineer, yet he had become integral to the defense of the Zyari Empire. He had proven that humans, though often underestimated, could make a difference in ways that even the mightiest warriors could not. Solara stepped closer, her voice lowering to a whisper meant only for him. "Do not be shy, human. You have earned your place here, and perhaps more than you realize. Trust in yourself as I trust in you." Ethan met her gaze, his heart pounding. He realized that their connection went beyond duty or convenience. It was a bond forged in crisis, respect, and mutual reliance. He had never expected to find such a connection with anyone, let alone the Queen of the Zyari. The following hours were quiet but charged with meaning. Guards repaired damages, systems were restored, and the palace gradually returned to normal. Yet Ethan knew that nothing would ever be the same. His role in the Queen's life and in the Empire itself was now firmly established. He had become a symbol, perhaps even a bridge between human ingenuity and alien strength. That night, as he returned to his quarters, he reflected on the events of the past days. He had been drawn into a world far beyond anything he had known, tested in ways he could not have anticipated, and yet he had survived, adapted, and even earned the trust of a queen who had every reason to doubt him. He realized something profound. Humans were small and fragile in body, yet enormous in spirit. Courage, loyalty, and ingenuity were traits that could shape the fate of empires. He had proven it, and he knew that Solara had recognized it as well. The next morning he was summoned to the Queen once more. She did not speak immediately, only observed him with that intense golden gaze. Ethan felt no fear now, only determination. He had learned that human skill and courage could change outcomes, even in a world that seemed overwhelmingly alien. "Ethan Cole," she said finally, her voice calm yet commanding, "you have proven your worth beyond measure. You have faced danger, acted with courage, and shown ingenuity that even my most loyal warriors lack. I am grateful for your service, but more than that." She stepped closer, and he felt the warmth of her presence. "I have seen in you something rare, something that my empire has never encountered before. You are human and yet remarkable. I trust you and I value you." Ethan's heart pounded. "I thank you, Majesty. I will continue to do what I can." Solara's gaze softened just slightly, and she whispered again, the words echoing in the quiet chamber. "Do not be shy, human. You have earned more than duty. You have earned trust, respect, and perhaps a bond that transcends the ordinary." Ethan bowed, feeling a mixture of pride, humility, and awe. He had come to the palace as a simple engineer. Now he understood something essential. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of uncertainty, but humans, though fragile and often underestimated, carried within them courage, ingenuity, and loyalty, the kind of traits that could change the course of history. And Queen Solara, the most powerful warrior he had ever known, had recognized it. She had trusted him, relied on him, and in doing so, had shown that even across the vast gulf between species, respect, courage, and understanding could form bonds that no weapon or strategy could break. As he left the chamber, he knew this was only the beginning. Challenges would come again, dangers would return, and the galaxy would continue to test him. But he was ready. Humans had survived worse, And now, with the Queen's trust and recognition, he understood the full measure of what it meant to be human in a universe that underestimated him at every turn. For the first time, Ethan felt truly at home in the palace, not as a servant,